was gonna say, I've been standing outside since about 6:45 this morning. So.
Oh, it is, yeah. It's intent to make oil spill, my mom calls it.
Yeah.
All right, we'll call this scheduled budget work session to order. Just as a heads up to the public, the intent of this meeting is to focus on the preliminary budget and the different versions that administration may have put together based on what little to no guidance we're getting from the state in any efficient timeline. So are we still hearing that it's still throwing the June 30th number around?
I think June 30th will be the earliest.
Oh, man.
I heard a report yesterday or Monday, I guess it was. Paperclip.
Sorry.
That it could be in July.
Is this a whole?
It's a whole back. That's y'all. That it could be in July. Because the General Assembly has approved what they're calling the skinny budget. And that's what we're gonna talk about. But I also have an option based on the House proposal as well. So right now, we don't have really, the skinny budget's what is gonna go unless they come back between now and the end of January and come up with a compromise, and I don't see that occurring before June 20th.
So we meet with the Board of Supervisors
This morning at 11.
today, Jason and I, we just need to get some feedback from the board on what that discussion looks like. I'm assuming we're gonna wanna start having the conversation about needing to hire, get contracts out, knowing that we're not gonna have an approved budget. And I'm sure they're aware of that, but that communication is always something they appreciate. So is the board good with us having that conversation with that board and just tell them we got a business? Can't wait till the last minute.
Can we approve it? I'm assuming we're talking, the skinny budget had 5% in it.
Skinny budget has 5% in it, that's correct.
So, I mean, we would send it out, when we send out the contracts with the skinny budget amount, saying it, and revise them if they got the 7 or different number.
Somebody I heard at my conference 2 weeks ago that there was a division years ago that had language in times like this that we put out a contract and we anticipate we're gonna put out another one, that there's language in there that keeps us, we don't have to, and I've not received that language yet to see what it says.
But that's what we try to do.
But if we're gonna do something, we'll have to put something out now based on the skinny budget, 5% salary increase. And if they come back in June, or if they come back in July or August and do something, then we would have to amend it.
I guess, well, first, let me state that because we're talking about teacher compensation, I have a conflict of interest that does not require me to recuse myself because it involves more than 3 people. So now that we've got that out of the way, is there a chance, I mean, I don't think that's a political reality, but the skinny budget, can they go under that? I guess they could theoretically.
I guess theoretically they could, but the skinny budget is what they came out of the session with right now. So do I anticipate that? I don't. And I'm gonna have a hard time believing, I shouldn't say it, but I'm gonna have a hard time believing they're not gonna get to 7%, because that's what both the House and the Senate had in their proposals.
I concur with you. I guess just from mechanics, we probably ought to protect ourselves in the back end. Politics is politics, and it could very well go down that we would have to.
And there's language, we have language in the contracts that says pending appropriate funding from the state. There's that bullet that's throughout the contract. So we can, I mean, I'll start at the top and we'll work our way through it. And you tell me when you got questions and, I'll answer, try to answer them. As you know, the last, 2 years, 3 years, I forget how long it's been, we have been providing funding to the schools, and the schools have been purchasing supplies for the students. That funding is still continued in the budget, just like we did this year. That's, we did $33,000 total. It was $7,500 per elementary middle school, and $3,500 per secondary school. That's still under category 61,000 there on the, at first page of that packet that I gave you.
Is that enough? We talk about this every year, and I get varied feedback from the schools about teachers still purchasing stuff, but I know that's a gray area because some of the teachers do acknowledge that they prefer to buy some things that they know are a little above and beyond, and that's okay if it's their choice, but as long as we think we're meeting the general pencils, erasers.
I mean, that's what we're trying to get with that, and then we also get the donations from Walmart and other local agencies that have brought those to us during the summer, and we ship those out as well.
I mean, y'all hearing anything else when you're in the buildings about that not being
I've not heard.
enough?
I haven't heard anything.
Phil?
I've just heard a few teachers say that they do buy stuff out of their pocket, but
You hear anything from your end, Jason?
Not heard anything.
I don't remember that being a particular note when we met with any of the administrators.
I've not heard anything, but I think as we talk through this, we'll see that if need be, we have some flexibility, possibly.
Okay.
Continued the funding in the budget for the coursework slash assessment reimbursement of $60,000 total. That's still in that, again, 61,000 category. We started that this year. We'll finalize any requests that we have here in the second semester, sit down with the committee and go through that. See how much has been requested and what remains.
What category is that in?
It's still under the 61,000, the instruction.
Okay.
We had that in there last year, so that didn't change.
Did we use any of that
We did, use some of it this year so far. Can't say how much exactly, I don't remember.
It's not been that much,
It's not been much,
but we haven't been spring it
but
either.
we have the spring that we're gonna go back through and approve. Those that have applications and those that submitted for the whole year. We only did the fall, the first go around, we'll do the spring, the second go around.
So the intent would be to carry whatever we don't use over in addition to 60 again?
I would carry, my thought would be is put that in general carryover right now if we haven't used it, just because.
My assumption was that we would, whatever was left would go back into general carryover and we would start
Yep.
the 23-24 school year with 60,000, and that's what we would have available to use. And we've continued to put that out there. We still have, individuals that may be interested in reading specialists. We have some other things that I anticipate hopefully will start to utilize that funding a little bit more.
I think, I understand the thought, Stevie, I think, but it's better if we anticipate that as a rolling expense and encourage people to use that every year.
Yeah, my thought on that would just be to make sure we can track how much we've used each year, so if it does get super popular, we've got some historical data to show how that trended.
I can get it. I can get it from David, or we've got the file that shows the application, how much we approved in the fall.
No, that's fine.
Approve in the spring, so we can go through the file, and we can add it up if you want that data.
And I don't know about you guys, but I think we'll eat it up next year because I think people are now, or, you know, some folks takes a year to prepare, you know, kind of decide what you're gonna do by taking classes, and career choices and that kind of stuff.
And if we keep track and we use the whole 60, and let's just say we rolled 20 back into general, then we could justifiably say we could tap that 20 if we wanted to add to that 60 if we burn through all of it.
If we got to the point that we saw that we were gonna go through the $60,000, I would come to you and say, here's what I anticipate, we're gonna need an additional 5,
Right.
8, 10.
Okay.
You can go through it pretty quick if you,
Yeah, it can go quickly if we have the interest. But again, we're trying to make sure that we cover those individuals that are provisional, that are in positions that we've asked them to get the certification that they need. Now, there's some that we may approve because they're going through a program and it's not something we asked them to do, but we might approve here and there. But really, we're trying to focus on the provisional license.
Right.
Get people that certified in the area that they need to be certified in because we've asked them to be in the positions that they're in.
I do think gotta keep pushing that. We got the funds and we need to push them to do that.
And if we can start, if we can keep track, it should be easy enough to start that, yeah, who did it, you know, just kind of just a summary of who used it, what they used it, and if they're still here, so that, you know, if we want to expand it, we get down the road and money's tight, but also hiring's still tight, that we can justify that, you know, board of supervisors say, look, we need double that funding because we've gotten 3 guidance counselors out of that, and, you know, we've got these openings and we never coming up. I think that's something that,
And they're long-term. They're the
Yeah.
ones who are gonna stay here and the ones who have already been here for a long time. And that's well spent money.
but just, you know,
As I said, we've got the file, that's got the application, and it shows whether it's approved or going in the second semester, how it's approved. We can pull that information, put that together very easily.
yeah, just something we could keep a spreadsheet, you redact the employee name, but say, we've done this, that person's still here. We, you know, 5 years down the road, we've got 20 employees that we've gotten certified in areas that we've had to get certified, provisionally licensed, whatever it is, and that's, we feel that, and, you know, got long-term employees at a cheaper rate and been able to do that, what a great investment it is. Cause I think ultimately, that's what it's gonna be.
So that's a very broad brush as far as availability. They could use it for master's degree credits. They could use it to get certified. If we have to hire somebody that is professional and they need to be working on that, they could tap it for that. That's good.
And if they have an assessment that they need to take, we've included that as well. But
We've had a lot of comment about that over the years, that was
It means a lot to
a
them.
burden.
It means a lot to them with me.
now, just so that everybody's clear, what we've not done is we've not given them the money until they've gone and they've passed whatever they're doing.
That's, I 100% agree with that.
I just wanted you all to know, we're not saying, okay, David gets $3,000 towards, and then takes the classes and then I'm passing, and then we don't see the money.
Yeah.
They're going through the classes, when they submit the transcript, that's when we reimburse.
It's no different than the scholarship, high school scholarships, when you gotta take back your grades
I
to get
just wanted everybody, just to be clear, everybody to know that. Same line there, category 61,000, you will see an increase of 4201. That is an FTE increase, if you recall. Giles Tech Center requested that $4,201 additional for FTE for the new programs, early childhood, as well as the EMT program. So you see that there. Also, in the same line item, that instruction, 61,000, as you know, we purchased really great reading program this school year. It was over $55,000 to purchase that program, and we will continue utilizing that program. However, it will not be $55,000 again year to year, but there is a year-to-year cost. That year-to-year cost is, I left $55,000 there to make sure that we covered any cost for it. The cost is going to be, was shared with us, it's gonna be just over $26,000, so we have some flexibility there. Under the 64, category 64,000, you see under the facilities.
Hold on, before, people transportation, just wanna make sure we're running that off of the, kind of what we would have budgeted this year with the higher gas. I know diesel's gone down a lot, but we're good with that. If we'd get back up to $5 a gallon.
As far as I know, I haven't heard any different.
Okay,
Should be.
okay.
What are we at, where are we in percentage spent in that category?
Have it here.
We should, if we budgeted right last year, we should have a cushion where the prices is on.
Got marches.
What's in pupil transportation? That's not that's not personnel salary, that's fuel maintenance.
Before I can find it quickly.
Or what is it?
Electric, gas, water,
Not 100% sure.
fuel marked. Stevie, I don't have it marked here quickly.
That's okay, no, I mean, we'll definitely have more discussion, that's,
402, Jason, that's non-personnel.
Okay,
So that's like your capital line, fuel maintenance.
okay.
And your personnel would be,
Down on bus drive under that.
yes, sir.
Yeah, bus driver would be under bus drivers down there.
that's fine, Dr. Overgas, we can,
I would just go back and double check where we are on it.
A minute.
I don't have it marked, I have the electrical.
David, if you just wanna take notes on all the questions, I don't want y'all
Yeah.
running around.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't want you
I just wanna
running
make
around.
sure we're, keeping that in mind, just,
If we got a list of things that maybe you can kinda look at your
Yeah,
lead
I'll
later.
give you an updated.
Yeah, so that one, just seeing where we are from a percentage spent at this point in the budget would just be a quick check.
sorry, Terry.
No, that's all right, I just wanna make sure, make a note that both he and I have it. Okay. Under category 64,000, as you know, the last couple years, we've had $40,000 included in there to do the front end upgrade at Macy. Well, we haven't done the front end upgrade at Macy. We're gonna do that when we move into the project with the renovation at Macy, so there wasn't any need to continue to have that 40,000 in that line item, so I moved that out. Under facilities line item 66,000, I'm gonna keep going unless you stop me with a question. 66,000, facilities, as you know, we have budgeted $60,000 there in that line item for the gym floors. I still have that continued in that line item. Granted, we realize we will not spend the $60,000 this year because they could not get two of the school scheduled to sand it all the way down to bare wood and repaint it. We will put that out to bid in December and make sure that we get that taken care of for those other facilities. As a piece of that So again, the 60,000 is still there. A piece of that, so you're aware, as you know, back in, during Christmas break, during that cold snap at Macy, we had problems there with one of the units outside the gym in the hallway that ruptured and water got everywhere. Unfortunately, at the time, we didn't realize it, but we do now, it got into the gym. And the gym floor is starting to bow. So
You can see it pretty,
you can,
at the
you
ball
can
games,
see
you
it
can see
now.
it pretty busy.
It's between the doors and getting near the stage, on the stage, towards the stage. So we're gonna have to do something. We've been in communication with insurance. It's not gonna we're not gonna get a new floor, so we're gonna have to do some work there to try to dry it out and get the bow out and replace that area there. So it's gonna look probably until next year when they can sand it all the way down, it's gonna look like it was patched.
Did it make it to the playing surface?
Not really.
Not yet. No, not
It's
really.
over, like when you walk in the doors from being in the hall and you walk in the doors, it's right through there.
Okay.
So I share that with you so you know that, because we're going through that conversation now.
David, could you sorry, I let that one get by me.
Here's my thought on it. If there's any way you can save that patching, I mean, if it's gotta be done, do it, but wait until after they do all this stuff in case they tear up in the construction phase of it. Yeah, or, you know, like I said, I want the kids to be able to play and use that facility at the same time. Again, I haven't,
It's a trip hazard, so I met with the insurance adjuster up there the other day. We got, it's like 22% moisture. Normal should be 7. I'm meeting with ProSource tomorrow to look at it. They will have to temporarily pull it up and let it dry out and then go back in and patch it. When I talked to ProSource, they said it could continue to spread. So when I talked to the Baycor adjuster, they wouldn't give us a new floor. He said he's gonna make allocations to patch the floor and then sand it completely down and do the lines. So at least we'll have that. But that was I wanted, same question, but I was told it could spread if we don't take care of it.
To spread, they think there's still moisture underneath the floor.
It's 22%.
22%.
So it's actually at both doors. One door is not as bad as the other. It's a visible, when you walk in, it's like you're almost walking in on an elevated platform.
Yeah.
And we're just afraid it's gonna become a trip hazard. Or bow so much it's gonna.
right.
When they can get air circulation, they can try to get some air under that on weekends at this point.
We got to pull some out so that you get,
Okay.
So just keep in mind, if you hear comments, we might have to pull up a 4-foot by 8-foot section and block it off.
It's what it is. Everybody should be happy to put a lot of money in that road, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Buckley, we could have had that done this summer. Unfortunately, the only company we got a bid from did not have the personnel to take it all the way down to Bearwood and repaint.
Well, with what's the construction that's gonna go on there, I mean, I feel more comfortable with holding off on that anyway.
It wouldn't make sense.
Steve, you were gonna add something, I think.
I think I'll just do a broad, and we can look at that, but any of these line items that we're holding the same number from last year, we could just see the percent spent in that category, just so peace of mind, we're not increasing or decreasing, and we know this is really one of the only legal activities that this board has, so just making sure we feel confident that we don't need to adjust those. Not questioning, just having something in the back pocket. That way I don't have to keep asking over and over, David, so. Is that's not a tough report to run?
No, that's,
Okay,
It's just, if there's anything that, you know, we'd have an end of the year sudden expense, yeah, just kind of make a note of it, that where it'd be normally low right now through this part of the fiscal year, but, you know, if you got a payment in June for something,
Usually that's when they hit, just because as soon as school
Yeah.
lets out, that's when they,
But your historical knowledge, if something's at 60%, you know that that's gonna run right up to 90. Just make a quick note of it.
Maybe it's, well, I don't wanna make it difficult for you, and I don't wanna make it, other than the report that we've already got that we can look at. If anything that you were seeing based on the historical knowledge, that's gonna be abnormally low, or something that we're gonna meet or exceed.
okay.
Cause I can look like, I can report just like you
Fine, isn't it?
can. Yeah.
Also, under category, that category 66,000, facilities. As you know, we have applied for the last, I don't know, however long that the, school security equipment grant's been available to us. We have applied every year for that funding. There is a 25, that's through the state, there is a 25% local match. Currently, we have $43,750 budgeted in there. That allows us to apply for up to $175,000. We included $6,250 more to get us to $50,000. That would be our local match, which would allow us to apply for up to $200,000. So that allows us to apply for more funding, grant funding through that equipment grant. Also, in that line item, that's where we kept that school construction funding. We haven't spent the $1,976,188 that were in the budget this year for school construction we got from the state. We needed to show it somewhere, so it needs to be there. And I'll tell you, and if you look on the last page of that first document that was there, under local, it's down under local because it's not coming from the state anymore, because next year it's gonna go to the county. They're gonna have to put it in an account and then give it back to us. So if you look at that third page there, it's at the bottom, under local revenue. School construction, that's the way I listed under operating fund, $1,976,188. So we needed to show it. That way we don't have to go back and hold different public hearings and that sort of stuff. We know we're gonna utilize that money and what it's for, and it's intended for the school construction, so. Under 68,000 technology, continued, we did, funding in there for this year, for the interactive boards like you see here. I think we had funding in there, 48,675, that still continues in there, again, for next year to have the ability to purchase up to 15 of those boards. And again, that'll be based on the cost. So they'll purchase however many boards they can purchase with that 48,675 based on that cost.
How are you allocating? Are we picking?
Michelle purchases them, and then Michelle works with our IT, they work on dispersing throughout the school system.
We're gonna do a lottery?
I'd have to ask her how she does it. I mean, I think.
So there is the involvement to figure out where they're needed best for the kids is really the driving force.
Okay, schools make requests, and then she tries to fill them as best she can, because that's not the only ones that she's gotten, so.
So they don't use chalkboards, do they?
You won't see any chalkboards anymore.
Don't see the chalkboards anymore.
So that's all that's really the non-personnel items. I just wanted to make sure I touch base on so that you're aware. Of Questions? All right, not hearing any, I'm gonna keep moving along. In your packet, what you also had was comparison of the salary scales as well, I believe. I'm just gonna work my way down the way that they're in your packet. Teacher assistants, currently this year, starting 6-hour position, 10-month is $15,068. Proposed to increase the starting salary to $15,900. That's still a 6-hour, 10-month position, and we'd adjusted the salary based on 6.5, 7, 7.5, depending on what the position requires, but that, right there, it's 6 hours. That's $13.25 an hour. Minimum salary increase would be 3%, but the average salary increase would be just around 6% for teacher assistants. And that's gonna fluctuate because if we hire people now, or if we've hired them since messing with the proposals in January and February, some of them are coming in at 0 years and lesser salary, so that's where they'll remain, because they've not been here a full semester to get a salary increase.
I can't go into a building and the teachers not brag on their assistants, you know, if
there were 5 unfilled TA positions within the budget. 2 of those have been removed. So there's still 3, which will allow us in the event anything happens IEP wise or anything like that, will allow us to make sure we have coverage. But 2 of them were taken out.
what would it take to get them up to $15 an hour, you think? I know that's
You're gonna have to get to, if we go to 16.3, that's $13.58 an hour. So I've got a ways to go to get $15 an hour.
all right. They deserve it, they.
They're 210. I would think, to answer your question, it would be somewhere around 18,000, if not a little bit, if not more than that.
Okay.
Total?
Quick, that's just starting. And salary scale would be adjusted based on that down.
Did we get, I don't remember a significant request for an increase in that number.
I mean, I think we just need to continue to put funding there as we can, just to make sure that we continue to maintain the hires that we have, because that's continues to be a challenge with that, as any other position, to continue to find individuals to replace those with. And so, you know, I mean, it's salary scales set very similar to setup as as all of them. Steps 0 to 7 are 1.5%, 8 to 11 are 1.55, and I can tell you all that if you want to know that, if you're interested in that.
This is for TAs?
This is for TAs. 0 to 7 is 1.5% per step. 8 to 11 is 1.55. 12 to 16 is 1.6. 17 to 24 is 1.65. 25, fifth year, there's a $650 longevity step. 26 to 29 is 1.75, and then 30 and above is 1.8. Moving to bus drivers, again, unless you stop me, I'm gonna move it along. Bus drivers, proposed, currently this year's salary, starting salary is $15,000. That's 22-23. For next year, proposed moving it to $15,516, adjusted the salary scale accordingly. And that would give us average salary increase of 5%. Just keep in mind that there are still 5 full-time driving positions that are vacant.
You have the breakdown for that one?
I do. I just have to go far enough in my stack here. 0 to 9 is 1.5%. 10th year is a $500 longevity. 11 to 19 is 1.6. 20 is a $600 longevity. 21 to 29 is 1.7. And 30 is 1.75.
So if somebody asks the question, are we loading heavier at the top end of the bus driver scale for any particular reason?
I mean, all salary scales are going to be heavier at the more experience, as you gain more experience.
Okay, but that, I mean, that's the,
But isn't that how we get in trouble, like on the teacher scale, that we end up getting out of whack at the bottom end versus the top end? I mean, if we continue to do that, aren't we gonna, if you weigh a raise, a percentage raise or step for more experienced folks, I understand the rationale behind that, but if we continue to do that, and we made that adjustment, that once every 10 or 15 year adjustment, aren't we gonna be 5, 10 years from now back in that same situation where we're not gonna be as competitive on the lower end of the scale and we're gonna be, higher in the top end?
Possible.
I mean, the argument that I hear, and it happens in my business, it happens everywhere. I'll just use this bus driver for example, 1.5% of $15,225 is never gonna keep up with 1.75% of $24,810.
It's never gonna keep up with 1.5, but when you increase the percentage of the raise, you're just exacerbating that issue.
Well, if you want the salary scales created that it's the same the whole way through, we can do that as well, and we'll just adjust to compare it to what we have in employees to make sure I don't get anybody below what's there at each step.
I mean, what's everybody else think about that? I don't want to cause a major.
And like I said, I see both sides of it. I just, if you don't keep an eye on if we do it the way that it's laid out here, we don't keep an eye on that's how we end up getting out of whack.
I mean, the other discussion that I have with folks, and I wanna be able to give them a solid answer. If I'm a zero just coming in, then we've acknowledged that the experience that they bring to the table is worth $15,000. That's what their salary scale is set. If somebody comes in, 28 years, we've acknowledged that that brings a value of $23,988. So we've separated and acknowledged the value of that year of experience. So when we give a pay increase, why wouldn't we just take that same delta, but just adjust those to 5%? So your value is 15,000, your increase is 5% more than that, and the value that you have at 20 whatever years is 23,000. You adjust that 5%. I guess and if we're not trying to adjust those categories, I know sometimes we have to weight them heavier, either at the front or the back, because they're out of whack. But if we truly believe that the baseline is good, then why wouldn't we just give everybody a 5%? Because I think I get a lot of pushback sometimes, I don't know if anybody else, when somebody says, okay, the average was 5%, but I did the math and I only got 2%, and that person got 4%. And in the past, I told them we had to do that because we worked with the Board of Supervisors and our goal was to be competitive at every range with the other areas in the region. And if the front end was too low and we weren't getting teachers, then that last big chunk, we had to get it back at the right levels. If we've already done that, then why, I just want to make sure we don't let it creep again. Why wouldn't we just do a 5%?
And I understand part of it, that's probably the number of people in each step, but I think we're gonna have a hard time if we go back in the next decade and say, look, we really have gotten our scale off whack and we've gotta, really fix the front end again. And we're gonna say, well, how did y'all get there? You know what I'm saying?
So think about it like this, Dr. Arbogast. What if we had just a quick spreadsheet that showed somebody in this early category getting a 5-year increase for the next 10 years? Not that that's even possible. I would love for that to be something we could count on. And then we take somebody at the higher end and track that out 10 years and see how much. I think we would see that that top end climbed quicker than the bottom end. And then we're back to, I know that spreadsheet that you do and give us this, it's not something you just, it didn't roll off. It's a lot of thought in this. So I think we're just trying to have a conversation about.
I can go back in and I'm just trying to think and adjust the salary scale so that each step is the same, 1.5, 1.6, whatever you want it to be. And then we'll have to, we'll have to work backwards and make sure, again, right now, if we have everybody on the salary scales, I don't know that it'll keep everybody on the salary scales doing that. I'll have to look at it. And if that's what I just need to know what you want the steps to look like, and then we can work backwards to get what the starting salary would be.
But even if you give everybody a 5% raise across the board, 10 years from now, it's still gonna grow apart.
Yeah.
Right,
Yes.
right.
But what I'm saying is even if you put 1.5% between the
never gonna
steps, it's gonna be, you're exacerbating that difference when you've got 1.5, 1.75. If you wanted to keep the spread, you'd have to go higher spread between the steps, lower than higher. Because
0 to 10, you'd have to do higher than the bottom, I would
Yeah.
think.
But that's why I don't wanna make it, my concern is making it worse than we have to if we're gonna keep, I think it makes more sense to keep 1.5% than, 1.5% and then go up to 1.6, 1.7, 1.8, cause then you're just, the natural exacerbation is just increased.
On this scale right here, you're trying to keep it fair, right, to the people that's been here a while.
Right,
And that's why it's like this, is that right?
right.
I mean,
And now we can't find bus drivers on this scale.
Right, and
We're forced,
I think even surrounding counties are paying a lot more and they still can't find bus drivers. So I don't even think it's about the pay anymore with the bus drivers. I mean, there's,
But driving a bus is a special situation for an individual because you're driving, your morning's taken up and your afternoon's taken up. So you have to have the ability to
I
have
wouldn't do it for
the
no amount of money.
day split up like that.
I would say, if I may, I would say yes, that it is about salary to our existing drivers because we have some that have a lot of years in and that keeps them going, that keeps them coming back.
I'm not talking about
Right.
ones, I'm talking about new hires. I don't even think if they saw, I just think it's like anything else, people don't wanna work.
Well, here's a thought. I mean, when we were growing up,
They don't.
the people that, a lot of folks that did bus driving here were self-employed that needed the health insurance. The Affordable Care Act has wiped that out. I mean, that's
Exactly right.
that's what it is.
Right.
Can we consider these part-time not paying benefits and add that on to the salary if they're, I mean, to,
We have some, and I hope I'm not misspeaking, we have some drivers who need the insurance.
well, and I'm not saying, I mean, if there's an option to do it, some way that we can do that to, again, it goes back to historically that benefit being people would do it for next to nothing because they could get the health insurance. That's all they're working for.
Right.
have we had any more interest from teachers? If we somehow could increase a couple of TA presences at the beginning of a day and the end of the day, so a teacher could add $15,000 to their salary, would.
What I'm seeing is we're having more interest from our TAs driving. We've only got one teacher, if I'm not mistaken, I believe we only have one teacher driving in the Western District on a work agreement.
You've got others that fill in occasionally.
That fill in occasionally, yes, yeah, I'm sorry, yes, we have some that fill in occasionally, but
Well, TAs that to me would be even better because they're not so much absolutely required to be in the first part of the day. They can structure when they're in the classrooms based on when they're not driving morning and afternoon.
now let me back up, the TAs are, we have one that's driving full-time, we have one teacher driving full-time, we have one driver who is on a work agreement, who retired from a VRS position. But when they do drive for us, they're on a work agreement. So they drive every day, it's an additional 18,000 right now.
Yeah, I mean, we need to think as creatively as we can. I don't think you are, but, to whatever we can. Yeah, I hate to get individualized, but that's almost what sounds like we've gotta do is figure out, be as creative as we can in any individual situation. But keep within fairness to everyone else.
So back to giving Dr. Arbogast some direction on the percentages for each step. Do we want a different number than what he's showing here to be more balanced? Leave that alone? What's the pleasure of the board on that? I mean, we need to be on a united front when we explain to people what's going on. One of the questions we need to just say, that's just the way it is. We can't give everybody the same amount of pay because it needs to be based on the percentage of your salary. Does everybody agree with that? That's traditional, and until we live in a communist country, that's how it's gonna be. And so the percentage, we're never gonna be able to get to a point where somebody from 0 years says, well, that 28-year person, when I did the math, their raise was bigger than mine. That's, I don't think we can do anything about that, but if we can keep the percentages closer, maybe that bridges.
That's what concerns me, because when you get that gap, I mean, it's just like comparing us to Montgomery County. You add 5% on to what they were paying and what we were paying, we're gonna continue to get apart over the years.
So how difficult is that, Dr. Arbogast, to try to get the step percentages more balanced?
It's a matter of, one, plugging it on the spreadsheet, but two, to make sure that all the employees fall on the salary scale.
Right.
Well, so I will go back and look at it. I'll start with 1.6% between the steps and see what that does, and we'll work on going, see what that does. I mean, I just don't know what that's gonna do to the bottom line and what that's gonna do to starting salaries. I don't have any idea until we sit down and look at it.
Well, and I would be comfortable with us going with, like you've planned, but keeping this from a standpoint of, as we go into next budget year and future years, that we look at it from financial standpoint and from employee retention standpoint and all those things, so that we fixed our initial problem, which is we're back competitive in salary. We just need to make sure that we keep it that way, we keep retention of employees, and we don't create problems that we're gonna deal with 5 or 10 years down the road. And I think this year, maybe it's asking a lot to get that done in 2 months to.
If you keep that like you're, do it right here, how long do you, just your opinion, how long do you think it will be before it gets so skewed out of proportion that we gotta adjust it, major adjustment?
Well, the reason some of those percentages are as different as they are is because of trying to get everybody back force everybody back onto the salary scale the last 2-3 years.
Yeah, we've done that.
They've been particularly the TAs, they were so spread out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And some of the teachers, they weren't, some weren't making the same one-step years experience compared to the others. So that's caused some of that. And we just carried that forward. How long will it take? I don't know. I mean, it will, I mean, the way that we start with it is if we have a percentage in mind, 5%, 7% salary increase, I start with the starting pay, and I increase that, and it adjusts everything below it. And we see where the average is, whatever. Well, then I need to increase the starting pay some more. The average increase gets to this. I keep increasing the starting pay until the average increase gets to either what need to propose, 5%, 7%, or above that, to make sure that we're gonna be covered by what we have to submit for DOE as well.
It would be hard for me, retired, say, I want to drive a bus, I'm getting a CDL, I'm gonna have to go through the class, I'm gonna have to go through all the physical stuff and do this, and be responsible for those kids and drive, and make $15,516 a year, making $13 an hour. That's with that'd be,
I'll go with what I have so far.
0 years experience, but that'd be tough. So.
But I mean, yeah, I can look at it. I mean, it's just a matter of.
Well, and that's not so much, I'm just looking at it from all of it. Bus drivers are.
Well, I mean, all the salary scales are gonna have some sort of percentage in between the steps.
Yeah.
Just, I mean, now, it may not be 1.5, 1.6, it may be 1.01, 1.12. I mean, it's gonna vary, again, because trying to get them all back on the salary scales the last couple of years, just to make sure
When there's so many moving parts on this, our drive in the past, and we should continue to keep our eye on that. I don't know if we've got an ongoing spreadsheet, but we've got to stay focused on how we are competing with those adjacent regions. That's the big picture. And so each year, I know these may move around a little bit, but we cannot get as out of whack as we were before we teamed with the Board of Supervisors to try to really get to third place, I think was what we were shooting for. So we just need to keep our eye on how we're scoring with that. These will fluctuate, but the categories 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and how we're competing with Montgomery, Pulaski, Bland, and I think that's what we need to really pay attention to.
We get the salary scales, I mean, I don't know whether you see them or not through VSBA, but we submit them to VSBA puts them out so that we have access to them and we can compare them, we have that information.
And one thing that I've heard, and I guess we probably all heard, whether it's a bus driver, or a teacher, whatever, that's been here 25, 28, whatever years, and they see that a new hire is making a lot more than they started at or whatever, and they kind of get upset. It's tough. Deal with it, you know. I had to deal with it. I mean, I did the same thing in law enforcement. Guys come in making more than I did, and I've had 15 years. I mean, that's life. I mean, you got to deal with that. You know, we've got to recruit and get, I mean, we can't worry about that on what we're trying to do here. So we got to keep that in mind, I think.
But how we compare with those nearby school systems should be something we should be able to proudly make available to anybody in the county that questions what we're doing with this effort. And if they want to push back and say, well, I don't think we should be third, we should be first, well, that's a whole different conversation. And then we can start comparing food, property, and tax revenue and ask them if they're willing to pay what Montgomery County residents pay to get to first place. That conversation will end pretty quickly. I think that as a measuring tool, when we get feedback from teachers and board supervisors, whoever else that may be, how we're tracking in that salary comparison, I think tells a big story. And then nobody tries to pour into this level of detail because we're trying to maintain third place, or whatever that looks like. That's my opinion.
I completely agree with you from the standpoint, we in the Board of Supervisors make great strides to try to fix a problem. We need to keep our eye on the ball so we don't get back in that same problem again.
Yeah, we can keep up with that. I think I have that information. I just need to look to make sure I did update it based on.
And that's fine. And each year when we go to them and talk about the budget, we put that in front of them and say, we're still doing okay. Or we slipped a little bit this year. If the state doesn't come to the plate with more next year, if you want to stay at third, you're gonna have to team with us again. Just keep that conversation. And it may be a year they can't do anything about additional revenue, and we say, okay, well, we acknowledge that, but that's gonna be added to the conversation we have the next year, because we didn't get to do it this year, so that plus what we need next year is what you need to be thinking about when you're having your tax increase conversations. That's all we can do with them.
Well, and we gotta be, our friends in Montgomery County did no favors to us. They just lowered their tax rate to 70 cents on 100. We're at 68.
Yeah, I've already had some calls about that.
Well, and folks have got to realize too, that they did that, got $7 million extra revenue because they went through a revaluation phase and those historically high appreciation of property, and we won't be there for another 3 years. But, yeah, it's a thankless job to explain that to people.
But people don't understand, if you ask a Montgomery County resident if their tax ticket invoice went down, it did not.
It went up.
The amount of money that they have to pay went up. So the rate is not the tracking, it's what that bill looks like when it comes in the mailbox. So they were able to do that because the property, it's a numbers game. So do we want Terry to try to get these closer? Is that okay. So we don't have to talk about that for every one of these now, Dr. Rodriguez.
Secretaries and bookkeepers, for secretaries at the schools, increase the starting pay. This year it's $21,315, 10-month position to $21,940, adjusted salary scale accordingly. Bookkeepers, starting salary is $21,377 this year, adjusted that to proposed increasing that to $22,440. Average salary increase for secretary bookkeepers at the schools is 6.01%. Central office staff here, proposed 5.5% salary increase, that's the administrative assistant.
I'd just say, well, that's another one that calling your substitutes and getting things done that, yeah, need to look at too. We've done the teacher part. We need to do what we can on these other ones.
Nurses. Starting salary for nurses this year is, LPN is $26,663, RN is $30,818. Proposed moving the starting salary for LPNs to $27,620 and RNs to $32,220. That gives an average salary increase of 5.01% for nurses. Teachers, as you know, we made the increased starting salary for this year. I'm just gonna talk bachelors, I'm not gonna talk masters, I'll just talk one-sided. Bachelors was $44,300. Proposed moving the starting pay for next year to $46,315. And adjusted salary scale accordingly. Those that are 34 years experience and above, 5% salary increase. So the average salary increase for the teachers would be over 5.5%. And again, we've started to hire new employees for next year, which causes some of that to fluctuate because they're coming in at 0 years when somebody's leaving at 20. So but we've already started hiring people.
See, that makes this so, it's like a multivariable equation. Back in second year engineering school, there's no one, you tweak this and there's about 3 other things that are moving. So if you make sure that entry level gets the percentage increase that we want, you have to keep that separation. That step separation has to be maintained all the way through, or we start muddling things up again. So it's almost like you need to do that on a broad brush, and I thought we've done this in the past, and then do just a quick sanity check on individuals in those categories to make sure nobody's falling in a weird spot where they're getting like no, I don't know. You remember when we had to do that, correct, Terry? Because this is just a broad brush. And we probably need to look and do a sanity check and make sure there's nobody falling in a weird spot that doesn't get hardly any increase.
It's I wrote it down, the salary increases are anywhere from 4.3% to 6.22% for teachers.
Okay.
But unless that's a new individual coming in, now that's different because a new individual coming in is coming in at 0 when the person leaving is at 20, so you're dropping the salary tremendously.
Okay.
And I can show them all to you.
Okay.
So we can go through them if you want.
Well, and maybe that's part of the way. I mean, to the extent you got discretion in an individual case to budget that in to make sure we.
Because if it doesn't make a huge mess, if we find out that there's 3 or 4 people at 4.33, if we can get them to 5, without making a huge change within these categories, then that keeps me from having, or us from having a conversation from somebody that says, why did I get 4 and this person got 6?
Six.
If you want to make sure that the minimum is 5, if you start adjusting like you're talking there, you're gonna take them off a salary scale.
Right, and I wanna do that.
Yeah, we've been through
And
that.
we've gone through that.
Cannot-
We gone through it
Cannot do
a
that.
couple
Get them
times.
back
Cannot
on
do
the
that.
salary scale so that.
I understand, but
It's a
Cannot do that.
sword there, I know that.
the optics are just tough to explain when somebody
Especially
says the state
They
gave
want the
5.
salary scale. That's what they
The
want.
state gave 5%, why didn't I get my 5? And if the answer is we have to maintain our salary scale and more than 4.3 would have pushed you out of that, then that's the answer. As long as there's a,
Or if you want that, the minimum to be 5%, then we have to adjust the salary scale to the point where the minimum is 5, and then I don't know what the max will be.
right,
That'd be the only way to do it.
okay.
Also included in that, on the teacher, on the personnel costs, got 2 new positions included in there. That's the EMT position, tech center, and a GED instructor. EMT would allow for the new program at the tech center. I don't know, at this time, not knowing where we are with the budget and whether the budget's gonna be approved, that they can get kids in there, we can get hired and then get kids in the program at this point in time. So it may be something, that we realize that it'll be carried forward for next year. GED, that would provide us the opportunity to, separate the GED program out of the AEP program and provide some space there as well. And we did, and keep in mind, we had some positions this year, teaching positions that have not been filled, that may not be filled, so those could roll into that, so we could, if we need the flexibility, we have the flexibility there. Administrators, proposed a 5% salary increase for all administrators. I know the conversation we've had in the past, so I knew it wasn't gonna.
I guess. Just make sure on that one, we've got that whole issue with, we dealt with, but continue to keep an eye on so we don't get a situation like that.
I haven't tried to begin to address that, and it'll be addressed and try to do it over a couple year period of time. You'll also see under there on the front, under personnel cost, under athletics, max sponsorships. I didn't know where else to put this. But we've heard the last, couple years that the, band program at Giles High School had requested some stipends for, band workers for, marching band and summer camps, et cetera. I put $3,000 in there. That's $1,000 for each person that they requested. They requested 3. So that was included in there. And that's under the athletics, just so that we knew where it was. Athletic trainers, we've had that conversation. We currently budget $95,000. Proposing increasing that by $18,000 to cover the total cost of 2. That would increase it to $113,000. So I've not talked to her in the last 2 weeks, but when I did get information from her that they had a possibility, they'd interviewed. So we're keeping our fingers crossed that does work out.
Where is that 18,000?
That'll fall under support staff 2 in that total.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. David there almost had to diagnose a spinal injury if we weren't playing at Giles.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. It'll be nice to have someone for sure.
So that support staff 2 went down 84, but that 18's
That 18.
still in there?
Still in there, yes, sir.
Okay.
Field trips, as you know, we had $12.50 per hour budgeted for this year, for the 22-23 school year, but in December, we increased that to $13.50 to ensure that we have the appropriate amount budgeted. Proposed $2,273 increase there, and that's also in that support staff 2 line as well. Extra summer computer work, as you know, our ITRT, we have, they do a work agreement during the summer. 3 of them, 30 days over the summer. So to account for the proposed salary increase, we needed to increase that, and that's under support staff. That's under support staff 2 as well, and an increase of $1,897 to make sure we covered that additional salary based on the salary increases that are proposed. And the same thing with this last item, duty-free lunch is included in there as well, going to $13.50 an hour. That's an additional $3,171 under that support staff too. So you look at the bottom line, I'm sure you've already looked at the bottom line. Based on the skinny budget, based on the revenue projections, based on the 5% salary increase, we would need to request an additional $150,000.
So my thought on that is we should probably have a conversation here first and then with the board of supervisors, with the amount of money that we're getting ready to spend overall with construction. Should we team with them again to cover that with general, knowing that we're gonna be asking for a pile of money anyway? From an optics standpoint, is that a super reasonable number? If they've already got that somewhat budgeted, I just want to be ready if they say, look, you guys we've given you carryover every time you ask for it. I don't know if they're in a pinch. If they are we willing to say we're team players and we can probably absorb that, but we're going to have to ask for it at some point later because that 1.9 and others are earmarked for stuff right now.
We submitted, I think what you're saying, we submitted a grant request to the state for 30% grant funding on $45 million worth of projects for 5 schools now. I don't know where that stands right now. I venture to guess we may know something by the end of this month because I think they're trying to get it to their May board meeting for the state. So I'm anticipating we'll have an idea. So I think, that's a big haul that they're gonna have to take on $45 million if you're gonna do it all at one time, or even if it's 30. Even if it's a piece of it, and if it's $45 million and we get $10 million in grant funding, that's still $30 million. That's still a lot to request. So.
Well, one thing I do think that the first question you're gonna get from Chris, I believe, and the board of supervisors is with the 5% and 7%, what's our non-SOQ cost? I mean, that's always, they always ask that question, they're always concerned about it, because that's a continued personnel's continued expense, and I think we're gonna get a lot more focus in the future with this debt service we're gonna take on about continuing obligations more than anything.
I'm just trying,
And I'll answer, I mean, I've answered that, I mean, I've tried to answer before, that's a tough thing to determine because I don't have them in the budget sheet as SOQ, non-SOQ, SOQ, non-SOQ, and I don't have it as, because SOQ were only budgeted, some of them 0.9 or 1.3. So, I mean, it's hard to come up with, but we can try to come up with as best we can.
I think, yeah, cause I think they are always,
I don't know how.
and especially how that number's changed from at one point it was, what, 100,000? It was some ungodly number, now it's, last year we talked about it, it was closer to, it was a fraction of that.
in the world they live in, they have to think about what is the match per dollar that they have to come up with based on the state pay increase. And if we could somehow get our arms around that just in general context, then
Because they're gonna wanna know how much are we asking for in local dollars to fund salaries that positions we already have versus what of that 150 or what of that 250 is going to go to additional expenditures.
I mean, right now, I think we can say we're not adding a bunch of extra staff except for tech center for new programs. And we're providing a pay increase based on what the state provided. So if all that being said, if we could say the addition of the staff of the tech center, which everybody agrees is fantastic, plus their part of the 5%, is X dollars, then they know exactly what we're asking for. That's what I've taken away from all of our meetings. And then they don't want to get into all this detail.
Yeah, but
The only way that
that'll be the non-SOQ is gonna be
You tell me
first question.
The only way that I know how that we could do the SOQ versus non-SOQ cost is there's a piece of the budget calculation tool that we get, it's the SOQ funded support and instructional positions, funded in basic aid. And it tells us, for fiscal year 23 and 22-23, it tells us elementary principals, how many elementary principals are funding. It tells us elementary librarians, how many they're funding. That's the only way that I know that we can go through and say, okay, here's the SOQ, here's the non-SOQ.
I'm simple-minded, so correct me if I'm wrong. They increased our compensation supplement to cover the raise, correct? So the only way I could think about it is taking the difference in the compensation supplement and then the total of our proposed increase in raises, and that difference in the simplest version could be what's not covered under non-SOQ. So like our compensation supplement on the skinny budget increased 684,000. Our proposed raises was right at 1 million. The difference would be the $344,000.
I think that tells the whole story because we literally have figured out based on our situation what a 5% pay increase is gonna cost us based on our personnel. So if our additional cost to run our system from a salary standpoint at 5% increase is that number, we only got this much addition, then that delta is what we're short.
Yeah, I mean, because I think the explanation you go to, Terry, it goes there too, from the standpoint of, you know, I mean, you can't identify who the SOQ is, and you don't know if that SOQ's that 30 years on the salary scale or
Right.
0, and that's going, I mean, I think that's the way we gotta phrase it in the future. We've got our what we are obligated for to our employees, if we give a 5% raise on average, is that delta right there, the different state funding.
It is.
And what we're saying is we've got to cover 344, locally, we've got to cover 344. And we're only asking you for 250 to do some other things too. We found it in our budget.
And I think the way he was gonna do it, it would tell you your tenure, if it was a tenured position, if it wasn't, and it would be more specific to why that 344 is a 344. But my simple-minded version will just be doing that. And I think they would understand that.
Right, because what we've always led with is do we want to message to any of our school system employees that some of them are gonna get 5% because the state acknowledges that that's all we need, and the rest of you aren't?
Right.
And the board of supervisors and everybody in this room has said, we're absolutely not willing to do that. So if that's the case, then we're gonna show you what it costs to give our people a 5% raise. And then the difference in that is the local contribution to make sure everybody gets a fair 5%. And as boards, we've gotta continue to know that's why we have to do that. We're asking for 150, right? Is that the number?
This is based on the skinny, 5% salary increase.
So the message would be 384,000 is what it takes. We're only asking if we've come over halfway.
Do you want me to confuse the conversation?
You're gonna have to, now look, we're asking 250 if it's on the 7%, and then whatever that number is, the delta is gonna be what we're covering.
That's what the last set of documents tell you. That's it. That's based on the House budget, and the House budget has some more revenue in it, but that's also based on the 7%.
Well, the ask is gonna be more if we have to,
Well,
that's a number, sure. So if it's 450 on that 7% version, just throw in, but if the delta's 450, I don't know what, and we're still at 250 a ask, we've come a long way.
Wow. Pretty.
Sorry, I'm a kid that always read ahead in class, that little jerk.
That's why I gave it all to you, because I knew that's where you would go to first.
I think that, to me, if I'm sitting in their shoes, it sounds a lot better that we're saying, look, we've got increased costs of, 344,000 just in personnel. We're only coming here asking you for 150, same whatever that delta is on the 250. We're gonna cover that, but we've got some other additional expenditures, so we've gotta, we've moved some stuff around, but we've still gotta increase the program to do that, so that sounds a lot better than just the raw number. Because it's explanatory.
And that's said the last document that you have there, that shows the 7%. I can go through the whole thing again, but that's the 7% is, again, based on adjusting the salary scales, increasing the starting pay for those.
Nothing changed in non-personnel costs between those two budgets.
And the stuff we talked about at the beginning, the non-personnel, the last couple items we talked about are the same. It's just the personnel costs changing for the 7%.
So the $100,000 is literally just tied to the 2 additional percent.
But there's also additional revenue there as well in the House budget compared to the skinny budget.
Okay.
So, you have to look at how much difference in revenue there is.
All right.
As well.
Women's church and not home mail, right? Okay. Spell that out and get it back to Ms. Rachel.
That's a pretty good first crack at it, in my opinion. We've left this room after this first meeting in much worse shape. So, that number was like way over 500,000, and we all knew we were not gonna be able to make that happen, so. We talked about trying to knock some other things out and maybe not have an additional work session.
We need to have a work session next week.
Okay. Everybody nail that down, and
When is work
9
session?
o'clock next Tuesday.
I'm gonna do my best. I'm traveling, I'll wait, I'll see.
Got an item that you all need to hear.
I'll do my best.
that is Tuesday the 9th, 9 a.m.
Excellent.
Is that what you said?
I told them that there's an issue they have to deal with.
Okay. 36.
6.
Board meetings on the, whatever that is.
18th, but it's a
That's
6.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll start off with the closed session.
I actually put it in my phone, but I've got my calendar here.
Students.
is.
Oh, what is that?
Tuesday morning.
It's the
Okay, I
ninth,
got
right?
a traffic.
Well, the ninth at 9 o'clock.
Next Tuesday.
Might have to call you in.
I'll be in Lynchburg. Come out dangerous place.
Worst part of this
So
job
we'll
is
start with the, of course, we start with a closed session, so we'll start the video, shut it off. And if there's other items that we're gonna talk about after the closed session, then we'll start it back up.
The only other thing I have that for Dr. Brown, I had a couple of folks call me asking if we had any reason that we had made a couple of areas at the softball field on Giles campus not accessible for parking anymore. And I talked to Shelley about that. She said there was some super muddy conditions, and their alleged reason is that they're trying to keep people from accessing the greenhouse. And so the parking got taken away because they were trying to keep them from using some makeshift road. They threw out ADA compliance, and they had been on a board before that had dealt with that with us years back. I'm thinking that's back when we did that major effort, Dr. Arbogast, to make sure we were ADA compliant. That facility didn't even exist at that time. So I want to make sure that we're
Sports or for?
sports.
So back earlier in the spring, I met with Steve Wilson and Jesse Williams out there. We were having issues with the road. If you come up behind the football bleachers and you continue behind the baseball field, around about midpoint of the softball field, it was starting to erode to the point it was becoming a problem.
Right.
So, the maintenance department put new gravel all the way from the main road, or from the football bleachers up, and was supposed to continue it past up until the midpoint, and we were gonna block that midpoint off at the softball field, allowing the folks that wanna utilize the baseball field to continue to park there.
Right.
And also, they would still have access to the softball bleachers as well. I think there
Right.
was some parking there.
Right.
So that, and they were going to rope it off from midpoint of the outfield of the softball field out to prevent that from washing out.
Right.
So we did take into consideration the folks that might have a disability that wanted to watch our baseball games or softball games would still be able to park in that wide area behind the softball field from the mid area.
Right.
Right there.
So between the softball field and those orange seats that are sitting at the end of the baseball field, that's the area that we're talking about.
Yeah, if you're standing, looking out from the home plate of the softball field, out to midpoint right there, they were gonna block that from the left, so you wouldn't have access from the left-hand side over, but you could still park in the wide area behind that, and you could, as they have been doing, it was understood that that's where they park anyway. Some folks come down there and park and look out over the baseball field.
Oh, yeah, but he said that was
not supposed to be blocked.
it was, to allegedly. I have not seen it with my own eyes.
The rope or the cable should have been from the midpoint of the softball field over.
Whenever I hear-
If that's the case, I can look at it and maybe get that adjusted.
I already talked to Shelley, and she said they were working on something, and I'm not saying it's a major issue, but whenever ADA compliance is brought up, I don't like to ignore that. We don't have $1 billion, so we can't have paved 3% or less hard surface for somebody to get around their entire acreage. That's not a reasonable ask. But if it's as simple as making sure they have a place to park and they don't have to park beside the end of the bleachers and walk all the way up there. They mentioned too that there wasn't 3% or less grade to get to the bathroom facility from the softball area, but then we start getting into reasonable asks.
Reasonable accommodations. No, that was not the intent. Plus, it should be a cable that can be opened and closed.
I haven't seen it, Dr. Brown, so I'm not gonna say that any of that is absolutely how it is, but
I will check on it.
that would be great. They mentioned that we should have a 36-inch or 38-inch wide porta-john up there too, and I just,
There used to be a porta-john for years, I don't know why.
but
Probably blew away.
if we get the ag building constructed, will that be on that level? It won't. Okay.
It's up
Yeah.
where the greenhouse is, it's going out the end of the
I mean, all we can do is the best we can do. I think the parking drove some of
There
that.
probably should be a porta-john up there. It's
And
a
if
long
the
way.
parking is addressed, I think the other stuff won't be as concerning, so. That's all.
A couple other budget items, I know we're talking about budget, we've already mentioned the state school construction grant that we submitted. We do anticipate, Mike submitted some information to them last week. They had questions about the roofs, and we knew that we probably would, but they wasn't the sites that we thought they would, so we had to provide clarification to those. But I anticipate they're gonna try to take it, I think they got a May board meeting coming up next week or the week after. I anticipate they're doing their best right now to try to get all that state construction stuff to the state board to get it through here in May, so that they can get that out, to get that information out. So that's why I say I anticipate we'll hear something, I'm hoping by the end of May. Is that what you gather from that? Also, we're still talking again, we talked to ZMM on last Friday, about the auditorium stage up there at Giles High School. He has talked to Stage Front about the band and the choral rooms. There was a reduction in the cost from $17,500 for both, $17,500 to $13,900, so about $3,600 reduction for both total, so it'll be $7,200 total reduction.
What's, wow, I guess.
Where he removed the crown amp, removed BSS Blue 100 and Blue controller, removed the Netgear switch and added a different mixer amp. That doesn't mean much to me unless I research it, we asked him what that difference was, what that functionality would be different, and we've not heard that back yet. But he's working on that as well.
So here's the wrinkle I have with that now, Dr. Arbogast. If the people that asked for that are possibly not gonna be here anymore, do we need to wait for the next leadership to say that that's what they think they need?
Ken?
I don't know what
Well,
I would do.
and again,
would.
one of my issues with it was just, you got performance space. You know, I definitely see the need for that. I just didn't understand the practice space. Again, maybe,
And that could be a conversation, once we know, we go through the process and we have those positions filled, we have a conversation with the new individuals and see if that's a need based on putting it into the auditorium. If not, then.
Because that was a request made directly to me based on their argument of what they need to properly deliver the curriculum that they had developed. And so if a new person comes in and their idea of practice space is different, then I hate to spend that amount of money and then they come in and say, I didn't need all that. I would have rather had it in the main auditorium than here. I wish you would have talked to me first. So it's almost like promising something for a future board. I'd rather wait and make sure that person and persons really say that hits the mark for them. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's fine, that makes sense.
Is everybody okay with that? Waiting to see who takes those positions and make sure they actually want
I think that's wise.
that? Okay.
We can do that. And so you know, the conversation that we had with ZMM about the auditorium was the number of wireless mics that were included in the original discussion. Because we got a request to spend $9,000 on 12 wireless mics for a production. Well, if we're gonna have wireless mics in the new upgrades if and when that occurs, it doesn't make sense to spend $9,000 now if it's already included and not knowing whether that's compatible with the new stuff or not. So we've asked CMMs, if that's what he's looking at, whether, how much it would, because there's 6 wireless mics included. They wanted 12, so how much would it cost to include 12 wireless mics? Reduce the number of hardwired mics, so that they at least have one, because I would assume you'd want at least one for a program that you have on the stage when you have a podium, to have a mic there. They're working on those costs as well.
I think,
So,
I think there's a lot of, it needs to be vetted well, because I think the dollar figure that's been quoted out, and then when people start looking at, you know, taxpayers looking at it and saying, my God, what do you need that for? You know, we need to be able to do, everything's necessary, is what I'm saying, if we're gonna spend it. I think that's what Stevie's saying too. Last thing I would want is go into the corral classroom and the practice space, and you see that nice new piece of equipment just sitting there collecting dust.
Yeah,
I disagree with you,
yeah,
but I think that's all budget wise, unless y'all think of something that I forgot.
But the lights on the football field.
Oh, yeah.
We have information, I put together a summary for you folks. Has that been,
She'll upload it for you on your working documents, and that's a conversation Amanda and I've had. We need probably with this new board docs to get some of this information to you. We'll start uploading it there. That way you've got it at your hands and can see it.
so last time it was requested to do a summary, so you have from beginning to where we're at now as far as costs.
When I do the agenda Monday, I'll put it on there.
Yeah, I guess we'll talk about that next work session, and when we can, I'd like to look at it before we bring it up to, you know, I do think anything that significant, we need to run by them. Since they are so nice to apply for a grant for $45 million.
I think that's it. Unless y'all got something else budget wise.
Greg Mark?
I move to adjourn.
a motion?